we were talking about forearm porn. It's a subreddit. So, like, especially guys who have their sleeves rolled up and show some definition in their form, apparently it gets something that's his fapping arm. That's why it's got the
So, good evening, and welcome to Talking About Werewolves. My name is Brian, ANST Apocalypse. With me is...
As always, me, Bucky. I feel weird introducing myself. A lowly AVST in the trenches.
And, of course, we have...
the Basilisk already knows who I am, so I feel no need to introduce myself.
And we're all big fans of the Basilisk.
Literally, something I needed to happen suddenly appeared because the Basilisk
I know,
so.
I saw that happen.
So,
the internet provides if you're nice to it.
So, yes, this is Iggy. And welcome back to Talking About Werewolves after a...
that title needs to be reworked.
We're going to get to that.
We may have to broaden it to talking about gaming.
I might start a spin-off, and I will get a casting agent and get some better looking photos.
We'll do something. So we have some stuff to talk about tonight. We got a lot of werewolf stuff to cover. We have some discussion of the major announcement from BNS in Berlin. And Bucky's got a big talk for us tonight. He's going to lead a discussion about the concept of bleed and LARP.
Jeez.
I don't know about a big talk.
Big discussion. He's going to blow us all away with his insight.
Literally every word out of your mouth is a Hamilton reference.
No.
Blow us all away.
It's a
In
word
any
people
event,
use. Word people use.
At least a short talk, something more of a response. But let's
a response to
talk about werewolves.
No,
can that be
I'm
a thing?
Completely lost.
About bleed. About some of the discussions about bleed.
Has there been?
Bleed. Oh, there's articles written about it now.
Who would leak those things?
Some monster, I imagine, who wants to educate. I don't know.
Okay, so all right, so what are we going to actually talk about today? Because I thought for Mother's Day we were going to do kind of like a distaff edition and talk about the matriarchies in Garou, specifically the Ajab and the Black Furies. But if that's being subsumed by the announcement out of Berlin, Guten Tag, homies.
I think we should definitely discuss the Ajab and Black Furies tonight. I think that's the way to go. I also think...
Didn't we already discuss the Ajab?
We're rediscussing everybody.
No, but didn't we already rediscuss the Ajab?
Did we? I asked Brian, he said no. And he's the one keeping track. I just run my
first one we did.
Yes,
like 4 episodes ago when we started redoing.
Which is a very well-planned podcast. But we're going to come back to this in a little bit.
I don't know.
We will be discussing two
guys
tonight.
Tell us.
That being said, we're also going to talk about Berlin. We're going to do a little lap of IC news and notes for APOC. We've been gone for 3 weeks. Things have happened. There's stuff we're going to want to talk about, including some movements of the Doomsday Clock.
Whenever I hear the term news out of Berlin, part of me is not thrilled. I know it's not on them.
No, that's fair. Yeah, so let's get started. First off...
Hey, Bucky?
Yeah?
Can you guess what kith I am?
Yeah, I don't know if you can sense the hype from my co-hosts about what they might be thrilled about, but they're that's... I think they got that from your literal red caps.
Show not tell.
Did we want to talk about that yet?
I want to talk about that and only that for the next year and a half.
So let's get the werewolf stuff out of our system first.
I guess I'm quitting. Like, I don't care anymore.
It's like 2 years. It's like 2 years.
They haven't written this book.
The book has not been written yet.
I'm moving to go run their coffee.
Really?
Did the Kickstarter actually start for it?
No.
It'll succeed.
Based solely on one man's investment.
How much do you need? Ballpark it.
So let's talk a little bit about what's been going on IC the last 3 weeks, because we've been gone a little bit. We had a local session. Sure.
Yes. I at it?
40 seconds, man. Games all over the country. 40 seconds.
40 seconds, what do you mean?
On the clock. Yeah. We moved.
Yeah, you moved, I think it was like 4 seconds, actually.
4 seconds?
4 seconds.
Forward to back?
Forward. We moved 4 seconds forward again. So, yeah, it is currently 11:54 and I believe 14 seconds. So, things have gotten half as bad as they were the first month, so the players have recovered from their opening troubles, but things are still getting worse.
50% less awfuling is still bad.
It's an improvement. The curve is good.
I have to say, I love the feedback loop of the clock. Even if there's not there's a lot behind it, but
yes,
even without having to see any of it, it just gives you such an instantaneous sort of feedback system of like, I wonder how the nation's doing.
Sure.
It's like, not great. Not great. You're like, oh. And it's a collective problem. So you're now beholden in a much more meaningful way to other players, other PCs, other games. I just think I don't want to. I'm not here to just blow you about this fucking concept, but I do like it. I think it's really great.
It actually gets me into another concept that I got.
All right, let me do a quick.
I'm not sorry for interrupting you, but I will pause and interrupt you.
Thank you. That actually plays into something we have rolling out on Monday. We're going to have 2 more plot kits rolling out to local, probably on Monday, and the big one is a bitten plot line that's going to involve the worm.
Sorry.
And it's going to be.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's okay. And it's going to be focused on Pentex trying to achieve a particularly twisted goal. And that goal will have to be achieved in local games. So as long as nobody fails as Geru in the country, the Pentex will fail.
As long as nobody fails.
Well, there are degrees. It's granular. But yes, this is just another example where local is national. Local stories influence the national story. So we're really excited about having that one roll out. That's going to be cool. And plus, we're going to have a little more on hunters, which I think players are kind of always. Everyone loves hunters.
No, we don't.
Nobody loves hunters.
They're
the least favorite protagonists.
Much like everything in reality, I have a lot of opinions about hunters. But I think that I definitely like them more than mages.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
I question people who like mages at all.
I would like mages better if they didn't often become not their qualities themselves, but the qualities of the people who use them in plots when they're like, ooh, kind of wrote myself into a corner. Oh, Wizard did it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't don't do it if you're Marvel, don't do it if you're an ST. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Anytime you're reliant on having had a mage done something in your backstory.
Or a time traveling mage.
Oh yeah. Well, mage is time travel. I mean, that's all part of one basket of terrible.
The other
deplorable.
The other major plot kit we're working out is some more exploration of the Fianna storyline, which is going to touch on a lot of other tribes.
It has nothing to do with Changeling.
It has everything to do with Changeling.
I was wrong.
And we're going to be exploring a lot of the things that we read in the tea leaves in BNS APOC that might be important later. So I think people are going to have a good time with it. And
That's a strong use of we. Says the people flanking you who don't know what you're getting at. Anyway, no.
It's the royal way.
Oh, I see.
The royal.
Well, he's wearing a handsome cabochon on his head, so I default to people who wear hats. That's from where authority springs. Have you seen Religions?
That being said, the rest of the national team, who is awesome, is getting this stuff out to you as quick as we can. And hope you have fun with it. That out of the way. Oh. Anything else you want to say about what's going on in IC right now?
Oh, I was just going to refer back to the clock and mention actually a discussion that started off on the Philodox boards before even the Philodox boards, before the game even started. And if you're playing a Philodox and you're watching this right now, I want you to start thinking really heavily about this concept, group discipline. And I mean disciplining a group. Mm-hmm. It's to anybody, like to my prior service guys, anybody who's ever been on like a high school, even a high school sports team. If one person messes up really bad, they punish everybody. Mm-hmm. So, because you succeed or you fail as a team. And the concept of that seems to have been a bit lost. Some people were, even OOC, very upset at the idea of an entire pack being punished for one character's misdeeds. And it's something that I want to give, I want people to start formulating opinions on, because at least locally, and maybe people who interact with Philodox, like the Philodox boards, start having opinions on, because the idea of punishing entire packs to encourage intra-group discipline is, because if we all fail or succeed, if local is national and we all fail or succeed as a nation, and one person or one pack messing up in one game can sink or swim the whole nation, we're going to have to start punishing groups to encourage people or discourage people from turning a blind eye to their own pack mate shenanigans. Because there seems to be like a desire to shield your packmate or ignore or like, he's my packmate and it's not that big a deal. It's like, no, everything's a big deal now. So we're just going to punish your entire pack.
As a rigid caste-based warrior culture that Garou is, I'm shocked there isn't more of that sort of thing.
Why is it in the rights that it's an individual Garou always being punished? How come it's never the group of Garou being punished? Like, if Garou succeed or fail as a unit, and if the pack is the smallest unit that the Garou Nation really recognizes, blah, 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 why is there so much individual focused on prestige, individual focus on renown, and individual focus on punishment? I could see individual focus on doing good things, but when you fail, you have failed as a pack. And they should punish all of you and your alpha twice.
Well, I mean, often, I would say. I mean, you don't want to overcorrect too much because there is a strong individual streak, because who rises to alphadom and who's better than the other person is often a measure of individual merit.
It can't be, though, because if you're succeeding or failing... No,
I'm just describing the game as it is right now.
But I don't think you are. Because the leader of the pack comes off holding all the coins and looking great. Just like the quarterback and the wide receiver look great. But without the offensive line, like the New England Patriots, hate them though I do, a large chunk of their success are from the large boys up front, holding the line. They have consistently had one of the top 3 best offensive lines in the NFL for, I don't know, a decade. And if you don't think that is a cornerstone...
Had a good pocket.
Yeah, but everybody knows Tom Brady's name. What is their left tackle name? You don't know. You don't need to know, but you know for
terrible people to ask.
Yeah, you don't know. You don't need to know.
Shithead McFuck that guy.
But you know. But anybody with even a cursory knowledge of football understands that a huge chunk of their success is dependent on that. So while you may get the shine, there's a reason why Brady buys his offensive line watches and cars, and that's something. And when you fail, everybody gets smoked, and that is something that I think that we're gonna have to bring back to the game. And you're a hockey fan.
I am.
There was a young hockey player in Buffalo who decided to open his mouth recently about what he felt was his fellow's lack of commitment, team-wise.
Yeah.
And sometimes that stuff needs to be said. I'm not saying whether I agree or disagree with this young gentleman, but sometimes someone in the pack has to step up and say, we're fucking up and we can't fuck up anymore.
Well,
like a public mea culpa and pointing out who's effing up.
As is mentioned, I think Brian's saying it. Speaking as a Ragabash, he's got a lot to say about it, and that is exactly exactly the auspicial purview of that auspice, and it's the sort of thing which should be coming up in moods.
A Ragabash having a lot of things to say about it is like you saying you have opinions or questions on it.
No, but this is specifically within their auspicial purview.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
Just like you have a lot of rules questions out of character. It's what you would do. But having questions about it doesn't mean that it is not an awesome-ass idea.
And I think a lot of these questions are going to come more to the fore, especially now. In the first few months, people probably weren't holding moots. If you're holding a moot in your first or second session, you're just really exploring backstory. And I don't even think many games ran moots their first couple sessions. But now as we start to build up our own story in our own world, we're going to see more player action in this direction, I think. I think we're going to see more Phildox action because we have to, because actions have happened, and now it's time for consequences to happen. So I think we're going to be exploring that space a lot more going forward.
Well, it'll be more of a game.
Yeah.
I mean, first,
here's a comment from Ryan specifically. Or would the sept as a whole get a scolding? I would not be upset with a whole sept being punished.
By whom, though? Who's punishing whole septs?
If clouds of NPCs are punishing your septs, that's kind of bullshit.
No, but if the Auspice Council and the Sept Office, like, we're entering a period of contrition, where nobody's doing anything fun for the next month.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm fine
when it comes from players, I couldn't say I'm more all about it.
But that's what this would be. This would be coming from players, the idea of punishing
absolutely.
Because there's nothing in the game about it. And that's actually a bitch I have. I can't believe that they would not punish a squad, a team, for punishment rights. The punishment rights single out the individual. But a pack's only as strong as its weakest link.
Well, let's say let's say a member of your pack is a Cleoth. They're playing a Cleoth. Maybe it's a new player. I think it would be within genre and even strengthen a game to then like stone a score in the alpha, because punishing that Clea for something that maybe was something relatively minor or could have earned them a stone of scorn is one thing, but then punishing the alpha for allowing it to happen under his watch and for generally being a shitty out, or the den mother being like, why
is this dude on his
why
own?
are your youngins fucking up? Like what's up with that? Holding somebody responsible, I think, is great. There's no rights for like we're gonna scorn all of you except for just doing it 5 times, but
the truth catcher has a bit of. I mean, like if someone
some
wants
plenary power,
and if someone wants to step up and say it's my pack's fault, I'm the pack alpha, you punish me. That would be baller.
Let me give you an example of something similar, not exactly the same as this, but something that did happen. Actually, it happened in a game. Not gonna name the game. Not gonna name the players. But
what did I do?
A low-ranked player challenged for alpha of his pack. Okay, so say he's a Foster. He challenged for alpha of his pack. Okay, he gets into the challenge circle, discovers he's hideously outclassed.
Yep.
Walks out of the circle, calls his alpha a coward.
What? Oh, that's a breach of etiquette.
How do you handle that?
Okay,
I'm just curious.
how do I personally?
Well, I'm just saying, how does the Philodex handle that?
You're playing one.
Oh, that's first off, it's the Master of Challenges thing.
Mhm.
If the master he called down the thunder and then he quit.
He quit and then insulted his
Well, he
alpha
loses
out.
the challenge obviously, and then he's up for social shutting from the Ragabash.
Mhm.
There's no real crime there.
That's
I'd say that's also a litany violation.
Oh,
I mean, that's directly disrespectful to those above you in station in such a scenario that it is purely spiteful. I'm taking my ball and leaving. F you.
yeah.
Like, there's no.
And
it's not like I didn't listen to you because I think
and
this
he's
is a better plan.
and he's in a pack with the person who just insulted. He just insulted who is his alpha, and you leave it to his
Wait,
alpha
he
to
insulted
punish.
his pack alpha?
It's
Or?
pack alpha, right?
Yeah, it's pack alpha.
So he insulted
Okay.
his pack alpha, and then he's like, "You suck," and went back to that pack. I'm gonna assume that pack alpha is gonna maintain discipline in his own pack.
What if he quits the pack right as he does that?
What?
Maybe he could.
He just walks out of the pack
Yeah.
after
He
that.
walks out of the pack into what other pack?
Great question.
No other pack will have him.
Maybe.
I mean, there's possible comeuppance.
There's a lot of social room for play. I mean,
These are sort of social questions I like seeing explored.
the
This
crime
is a
is
great
wasting
one.
my time.
Actually, this is a great one. Ravnos asks, let's say a member encouraged a Farah, I'm assuming a Farah not a member of the nation, to break the Geru litany. How would you handle that? So you have a Geru in the nation who wants a litany violation, but he doesn't want to do it himself. So he encourages a Farah outside of the nation to do the bad thing for him.
You can eat the body. I know that's probably a very minor example, but it's still an example
Mhm.
of like, could you dispose of this human for me?
What Iggy would do and what my character would do are so different that I'm not going to get into it.
I mean, it depends on how you really look at the litany and whether or not your Philodox are going to sort of incorporate the concept of inchoate offenses and inchoate crimes.
Mhm.
Conspiracy to commit litany violation.
Well, it's propositioning really to commit a litany violation. You're asking somebody else to do something you know is illegal. So
It's not
under
illegal,
your
but it's
cultural law,
yeah, but it's not illegal for them.
right? But you shouldn't be asking.
I mean, this is
what
a
I'm
this is a
saying.
really fascinating discussion. Let's just pause for a second and take a moment
Wow.
because it's happening. That's right, folks. We never actually thought it would get here.
I did.
Well, I never actually thought it would get here.
So it shows that we shouldn't do the thinking.
What?
I'm sorry.
What would we have?
Motherfucking Changeling is back. A new edition of Changeling for really the first time since, what, 1994? Freaking ridiculous! Freaking baller! What year is Shining Host from?
I have no.
98.
98.
Because it came out right before Revised.
Right.
Still.
We have to
That's
vote
when
on
I
it.
graduated.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Bring it down just a little bit.
Bring it down for the baby. Shining Host.
So sorry.
The book that was notoriously written basically in a weekend because they ran out of time and then apologized
Oh,
for
full
it.
of so many errors.
Followed by Shining Host Player Guide, which rewrote the game, added a bunch of kits, and was actually playable, somewhat. And the best art ever in any Werewolf books. Changeling. The best game.
And a bunch of other books. And you needed the Mind's Eye journals? or White Wolf journals?
Well, most of the journal stuff was
Whatever.
reprinted in Player's
The
Guide.
the
But the
best
important thing,
the best rule in any book was in the original Shining Host, and it was immediately nerfed the second it was brought to the attention of storytellers, instantaneously. You could spend a willpower to ignore the effects of any arts or prodigal supernatural power. Meaning, Changelings had the ability to use a willpower to go, nah, bro, to dominate, puissance, anything, any magic.
I don't think it was the intention of the rule from the beginning to do that.
I can read it for you.
No, I understand that it's there.
I mean, it's in the same book where they literally copied and pasted the influences from another book.
Yes.
But we're not talking about Shining Host.
No.
We're talking about BNS Changeling the Dreaming, which is happening for realsies. We don't know when. We know absolutely no details beyond what we've gleaned from Facebook posts as we carefully watch the writers for tea leaves and signs. But we do know it is happening. So,
including the not officially released C20, which I already gave a shitload of money for, and I'm digging in my pockets for whatever Kickstarter starts out for BNS because I'm a sucker. They already have my money is theirs to lose.
They'll probably get it twice.
it's like that asshole tip thing where you put the money on the table
and they start taking things off. Except with my dumbass, it's as they put up stretch goals, I put money on.
Well, hopefully they're not listening, but whatever the stretch goal is to get the Nunahay in the book, I want to make sure they hit that fucking goal.
Oh, as I said on Facebook, that shouldn't be a stretch goal. They should put it in the book for two reasons. One, they were good.
Weren't Macaulay a stretch goal?
So were a lot of the Pharaoh they put in.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
So the Pharaoh were stretch goals.
Yeah, but they put them in anyway. The ones they wanted to put in, they put in.
So the Pharaoh were stretch goals. You can bet your bippy that Nune and Delane will be stretch goals.
I'm just saying the reson they should be in.
Okay, if you guys aren't
a
familiar
lot of
with
people won't know
Changeling,
these terms.
if you
We
guys
should
aren't
start at the
familiar,
beginning.
if you guys aren't familiar with Changeling, I'm gonna scale it back and I'm gonna explain slowly that it is the best game that White Wolf ever put out.
Except for Wraith.
It's better than Wraith.
It's not.
It's for Wraith for people who have friends.
That's fair. That is fair. That is actually fair.
Your anti-Wraith bias is showing. Don't get me
No,
wrong.
it's not.
The greatest enemy of the Wraith book was the Wraith writers.
It's not an anti-Wraith bias. It's just a bias against bad games. As I was saying, Changeling is the best game. Werewolf is also fun.
Mhm.
But so the concept, every game has an overarching message. The slow slide into inhumanity for vampires.
Sure.
The struggle against an increasingly technological polluted, the slow death of nature and the inevitability of a special demise and extinction for werewolf. The death of a culture and a species.
Rage
and
against the
more.
dying of the light.
Yeah,
Literally.
that's great. Mage, it was the overarching theme where you watch The Matrix too much. There are
a lot of big
things.
Mage fans. There are huge Mage fans out
They
there.
can be wrong. I fought for their right to be wrong. This is America.
Thank you for your service, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Invisible wounds. I has them.
That's a story that's not getting told on this podcast because I think it would embarrass both of us.
No, just you.
No.
Yeah, mostly.
I
So-
disagree.
So
Anyway.
I have no shame, therefore.
All right.
But Changeling.
Someone has never heard of Changeling.
But
Walk us through why
Changeling
this is
is
amazing.
Changeling's main themes are about the transience, the ephemeral nature of things that are beautiful, and that their beauty is enhanced by their evanescence.
But what does that mean for showing up to a game?
You get to play two games at the same time, and then walk through the different ways of how you can acquire beauty and the power of imagination. You can do it in a dark manner, of rapturous attainment of that spark of the creative light. You can play it as tunes. There's so many ways to play this game.
Well, I think the interesting thing about Changeling, towards there being so many ways to play it, is that the book and the world that was designed for the game was almost never actually run. I've seen this a lot. I played Changeling in a few other places back in the day, and I saw a lot of Changeling in the day. People rarely ran the
Ravnos, it is.
Yeah.
You're right.
Rarely ran the book the way it was in the book.
Because it's hard.
It's hard, and also the commoner bias we as Americans have is cooked very much into the game. Not into the game as played. So the game as played was very different from the game as written, which was a huge dichotomy.
We're finning to disagree. I can sense it.
I'm gonna.
And I don't think it's a bad thing.
Points.
But I'm just
Sure.
Let me finish.
Sure.
But the big thing I wonder is, when you're coming back to this game so many years later, when you have this initial book, and then you have what everybody did with it for so many years, what do you give the people? Do you give them a version that tries to hew to what the game is written to be, or do you try to move more towards the way people actually ran it?
It's going to be the same thing as Werewolf. It's going to be a love letter to the genre and what the things have done. I'm positive that's where they're going with it. It's not going to be more of the same. It's not going to be an attempt to patch the span of time between here and there. It's going to be a love letter to the spirit of the game. At least I hope it is. So new players will have an easier time getting the concept of the dual worlds, and it's like horror is horror. There's personal horror. There's existential horror. This is the horror of nostalgia and loss. This is a real horror that all of us feel when you look back at the playground that encapsulated all of your games of pretend and imagining. And you go back when you're 30 and you look at it, and it's so fucking small.
Well, as I brought up with some stuff, yes, middle-aged changelings. I had a huge rant on my Facebook wall about how middle-aged changelings could be incredibly compelling.
They're better. Because I know what loss means far better now as a 36-year-old man than I ever could have, but as a 23-year-old.
I think the secret to cracking it is you don't have a 36-year-old who's been a changeling for 30 years. You have a 36-year-old who was a changeling in his youth, stopped being a changeling, had a normal life, was getting on with it, forgot all about being a changeling because
somebody reactivated them.
And then something happened in the world, and now they're a changeling.
You'd be like if someone quit LARP for like 5 years, and then his friends dragged him back into this crazy world where it's sucking up more and more of his time.
It's a narrative you wouldn't possibly understand.
More and more of his time, and it starts off with just a game, then it's background, then it's pack session.
And suddenly you're
wearing a hat on a podcast. How could somebody understand what that means?
Yes, Colin, it's the plot of Hook. It's also the plot of many, many things, like Beowulf. But at any rate,
yes,
it goes back a ways.
Hook is not the primary. Okay, so
I don't like Robin Williams.
Okay, so
Fisher King was actually an even better example.
Never seen it.
Couple responses. One, they're probably going to change the dreaming into being more like the Umbra,
where it's gone,
where there's less of it, and I could definitely see there being a quest mechanic just ported directly over. A little bit more emphasis on the high adventure swashbuckly nature of high adventure changeling, as opposed to the more workaday quests where werewolves punch a clock and are like, I got fetishes to make. Like they're there to do a job. Where the Fagels are a little bit more open.
I would love to see the idea of getting lost in an Umbral Storm ported over into Changeling. He's like, yeah, you get lost, and you could totally find your way back in 6 months, but that could have been 600 years, and now you're stark raving mad. Also, your kids are grown.
Well, that's the big thing. Is assuming the concept carries over, which is the caveat we have to have when we discuss all of these things.
Wolf Among Us is fantastic, as is Fables, the comic book is based on. Wolf Among Us is a great example of Changeling. Play the game, it's great.
Yeah. But getting lost in the dreaming for a while, again, unlike in the Umbra, where you can basically be okay as long as you get home eventually, Changeling, being lost in the dreaming for a while will almost immediately start fucking you up. And,
yeah, it's a different relationship with the quest mechanic, but a good one.
There's no way that if you're a middle-aged Changeling, people don't think you picked up a heroin addiction.
The other...
That's not a joke.
No, I think it's meditation on addiction, mental illness, all these things.
Because it is an addiction.
All this there if you want it. It's not necessary, but it's text that's there if you want it.
Glamour is legitimately addictive.
I understand that.
The Gnostic forces in the
glamour fuel. Everybody uses the term fuel.
Yeah, but
fuel is catchier.
It's different than Gnosis. It isn't just like spiritual energy. It is literal, creative, imaginative force.
Well, you can also punch somebody in the face with it and turn them into a lunatic. I mean, who's seeing clouds,
which you can't do with Gnosis. So it's better.
Bucky has points. Let's let him
I mean, don't care about any of his points today.
Glamour to medicine to Gnosis is they're different, but they're on the same sort of wavelength. Two, I think they're going to bring the she lower, and the commoners a little bit higher. Okay, again, not as somebody who's playing right now, but I'm just saying that the initial game was a lot more like Werewolf, in that werewolves are the protagonists, and Pharaoh were mostly supporting cast. Like, they were never supposed to be that many of them. They were there mostly as world dressing. Occasionally people played them if they were allowed to. Their flavor.
The person who runs commentary on your society, like, you guys are fucking strange.
The problem is you can't have an all-she game, because then it's really boring. Your commoners are needed in a game world, you have to have them, right? Like you can't imagine all these commoners can't be NPCs.
For people who aren't familiar with Changeling, the Shi are analogous, I guess,
To Tolkien's elves.
And the commoners are the other sprites, the other kits, the other tribes and clans in Changeling, and they all had different ups and downs and powers and origins.
Just like everything else.
But the Shi were basically the nobles of it. So.
Right. And so that's my response. And what are you going to do with that? I think so. They're going to make the dreaming more distance and more quest mechanic-y. I think that I have no idea. They're going to remember. You can change your name whenever you want. You can expect that the Shi are going to be brought lower and the commoners a little bit higher, much like in Werewolf, a little bit more plurality between the player types so that things are a little bit more workable. And I did have one other point. But I just wanted to frame this because it's sort of a show about werewolves. There was a question in the old system and in the new that you have the concept of drones, right? Although no real rules for them anymore. You have Banes, right? Gorgons. Now, the answer of what is a Gorgon?
It's a fact.
A human Gorgon is Fae. Like, from a werewolf worldview, right?
Per Book of the Wild and Common Sense.
Right.
This is revised.
Not just
common sense. Old revised stuff.
But the wild infected things, right, were usually like monstrous deer that made you grow vines out of your face. What else makes you grow vines out of your face? Fae folk, because they're so fun-loving. They'll also steal your children and make you dance until you die. The Fae. Such a bright and shiny force of glamour. But anyway, my point is that there is a lot of matchup between the two things, and it's not just a Fianna link. They did write good material, and if that material makes it into the book, you end up not just selling a copy of Changeling the Dreaming, but then down the road, people are like, I like Nunahay, I want to work werewolves more into my game. Maybe you sell a copy of the werewolf book for the same reason that if you have the werewolf book, you might sell a copy of the vampire book if you want more vampire stuff, or eventually a wraith book or a mage book or whatever other book they publish. So those interlinks I think are good, not just from a business strategy point of view, but also to make a world rich in interconnection.
And I think, that's a big thing. As an apocalypse storyteller, one thing that is really great is the Nunahay, which are the Native American changelings, who really interact more with the Umbra than they do with the Dreaming. And
they had far different relationships with the werewolves tribes from.
Yeah, well, what I think is really interesting with the Nunahay is that they're definitely of the wild. They have very similar goals to the werewolves, so they have a more natural alliance with the werewolves, and yet their goals do not entirely dovetail. So I think they're great as a wild faction, which if you look at Werewolf the Apocalypse, what it really lacks is
any other wild faction.
Is a wild faction. Having the Nunahay as your uneasy allies on the wild side is great because it gives you that third option besides Pentex, the BSDs, and the Worm.
It also
Technocracy, mages.
It also
Weaver
pushes Weaver as the enemy, because the person that Changelings would probably be the most horrified by isn't somebody who's fallen to the Worm, to a destructive force.
But at least in the old system, banality was a very misunderstood thing, and for a while people were like, well, players shouldn't even talk to vampires, that's how you get banality. Really isn't. It's when you use your magical fey powers and you actually kill somebody. That was like the way to get permanent banality on your sheet.
It wasn't killing somebody. It was killing somebody in a way that they could never come back.
Right. Exactly. For real killing them.
Yeah,
and
with iron.
Right.
And why iron? Because it was representative of the technological death of it.
I understand that, but the people who do the most killing are the Worm.
But the Weaver's the bad guy.
Well, that's the other thing is people who didn't really know Changeling, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, just interpreted banality in a very different way.
Why would the werewolves need Fey allies? The werewolves need any ally they can get.
They're losing.
You need allies to win.
Well, no, narratively, like I said, if it doesn't, it's not that, oh my god, the Nunahay have showed up, now the werewolves are going to be okay. It's more that dramatically, having that third faction for the wild is really, really good for the game. Because they're basically your ultra-hardcore wild faction, where the Geru is theoretically Gaian. And while they do want to protect the wild, it's different. Their goals do not...
Even triadic type chart. So it's not just a stargazer thing.
Mhm.
Being Gaian does not equal being wild.
Yeah.
Like if
Not at all.
if once you become wild tainted, that was not a good thing. You do not want to be. You don't want to be anything tainted. You could have affinity, and even that is kind of can. Well, no, it's just bad issues. Now it's a fucking merit, but you don't want to go too far down that path because the things of the wild aren't necessarily your friends. They tend to be insane.
Yeah.
They tend to be covered in tentacle. Well, I'm sorry. Tentacles are of the worm. Vines are of the wild. But they end up doing basically the same thing, which is being completely out of control and killing everyone around them. What was it? Cancers of the wild. That's mutoid cancers of the worm. Like spontaneous life without purpose. The navel-gazing nature of an unstoppable ant colony or whatever. Like that's all. I don't know. There's a lot of like possible symbolism there. But wild doesn't mean good or Gaian.
Pushing the idea of the Weaver as a foe is something that the Fae can do better than anybody else.
Yeah, and we've all. I mean, we want to slowly move off Changeling here, but we've been bouncing ideas around for what we think.
You want to slowly change it.
Very slowly. We've been bouncing ideas around what the new Changeling world might look like.
Right.
I think going full winter makes the most sense. Clean break gives you room to riff and create while having cover in the old story. I think there's good angles there. I think I'm posting a bunch of stuff, honestly.
Honestly, I believe more new spring. I like the idea that
Just
there was
skipping winter altogether.
There was a great forgetting between when the editions were written and now you're picking up the pieces of these. As you said, everything is shitty, right? Your freeholds, which are cairns, are down to ember.
Let him speak his point before you tell him he's wrong.
I mean,
why? We can save time.
We don't live in a time of winter. We live in a time of absolute wonder and drama and crazy shit's happening all the time. I don't think that selling that nothing new ever happens and change is no longer a thing in a world where you're looking at constant innovation, societal change, being political wokeness, like all of this is.
You mean, but at the same time, the McDonaldization of the world, where you have stand-up comics whose entire bit is everywhere I go. It used to be different. The food was different. Now it's starting to look exactly the same everywhere I go.
People have been saying that for a very long time. But the thing is, they couldn't 3D print a dragon at their house or have new.
But does that make them more creative? Having more access to technology doesn't one-to-one increase inspiration.
But there has been a democratization of creativity. We are streaming a podcast discussing gaming to people.
But are we creating any real emotional content?
Well, I don't think that's entirely our goal, but
that's
happening.
My point.
You're talking about a world. You're seeing a world after the democratization of technology, and anybody can stream what's going on to them live. And all the crazy things going on in the world, and suddenly you can be immersed as a cosmopolite and a citizen of the world. There's no more being left on the farm. You can't do it. You can't keep people on the farm anymore.
And you're not.
Everybody has unfettered access to all human
knowledge.
And
you're not on the farm, but you're driving down a long road in one of our many outer ring suburbs, and it's literally the same series of plazas with the same series of stores. The world is the same. You get the same boring, half-assed crawfish etouffee here that you do in New Orleans.
Winter.
It's done.
Listen,
it's boring. Nobody does anything interesting or bright anymore.
The 90s were a time when they were publishing books like The End of History, where people had the same sort of post-World War I hubris that wars were never going to happen again, everything's going to be boring, everything's going to look the same, and the world set itself utterly on fire again.
Yeah.
And we're embroiled in even more war and stuff. And war, unfortunately, from an entertainment glamour point of view, is exceedingly glamorous. There's about to be a new, what's his name?
He might like him, but
Nolan? What's this? Christopher Nolan?
Yeah. Christopher Nolan's making a movie.
He's making Dunkirk. We're still feasting on the glamour of World War II and every dramatic thing that happened.
Are we feasting on glamour created, or are we chewing the regurgitated pap of our past again? We're not doing anything new. We're not inspired anymore. We are navel-gazing backwards. This is boring.
I think that you're trying to make a case for the banality of when things happen, they become entertainment as
And you're trying to make a case for technology automatically.
I'm not saying technology. I'm saying that like
How many
our
times have you
current
said-
stories
Sure.
that we're having now, faster than ever before, is the opposite of a Fimbulwinter. Stories are happening. Things are happening. Crazy shit's happening. We might have people on other planets. We live, and in the old system, landing on the moon was kind of a big deal. Now we're talking about having people on other
And
planets.
winter, gathered around the fire, huddled for warmth, is the time of stories. Winter is the time when stories are strongest.
But we're not telling stories about things that aren't happening. We're talking about current events, things that are happening.
But those are the same thing.
I fundamentally disagree.
You can.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's fine. But we're not doing anything inspired. It's just.
I think
This-
we're making 3 different points, which is good.
It's just. This
I don't entirely
dead-eyed-
agree with Higgy.
You can be wrong too.
That's fine.
Like this
Oh,
dead-eyed
sass.
gaze. It's not sass. Like
It's kind of sad.
the idea that just because we have new technology and it's democratized in some fashion means that we have just because we have greater access to technology doesn't mean we are automatically doing something great or inspiring with it. Glamour isn't in all art. It's in good art. And I don't think that there's greater amounts of good art. I'm not impressed.
I think that more people have access to the great art of the world than they have ever had before in human history.
Yeah, and what are we doing with it? It doesn't seem awesome. We're all viewing it. We're all consuming the
Not
media.
that there aren't terrible things going on in the world, but there's also just demonstrably we're doing pretty good as a species.
Doing good as a species isn't increasing in glamour. Consuming art doesn't mean we're increasing in glamour and inspiration. You can consume. Museums are a place where they can showcase art. People can go, see, consume, leave. They don't create anything when they
I
see
understand that, but you can't be inspired by looking at a Cézanne or a Caravaggio if you actually had to be in a world where you had to buy a plane ticket and deal with a ticket clerk and all of the banal things involved in actually going to the museum. Now you can just be like, who is Caravaggio? And you can Google him and you can see all of the works of Caravaggio. And I'm not saying it just from the technological angle. I'm saying you couldn't be exposed to art like that before the internet. Or before just modernity. You can buy a print of it. It doesn't even have to be technology based. You can go to an art fair and you can see like the Wonder Woman thing. Let me tell you about my feminist agenda. It was for sale all over New York, and there's a certain capitalism part of it and all that.
I'm going to hang that up right next to my chest shirt.
Right, but we live in an age of almost unparalleled wonder. So I don't see winter.
Then
it's
if
too dissonant.
If we live in a world of unparalleled wonder, why do so many of us have ennui and walk around unimpressed?
Our society's got
There
problems.
you go. There's your banality. If we live in a world of such wonder, how come so many of us are just like this?
Well, I think this conflict is the core of what you want to be exploring in this world space, because we do live in a world surrounded by wonders and amazing things, and yet at the same time there is a weariness and an emptiness that comes with it, because
is truth beauty and is beauty truth and art and all that is
It's
the end
clever.
right?
But is it
it's
art?
the same debate. I'm sorry. It is an analogous debate to what is the nature of reality that derails mage games as to what is actually art, is derails, and what is actually glamorous versus banal.
Well, I don't think
derails,
it's easy. Does it inspire you? And if the answer is no, there's your answer. If you don't feel inspired by it, there's no glamour. And I would love a game mechanic
Right.
for where some people gain glamour from something, and others do not.
That's like being the Were Coyote Candy Cannon.
Your thresholds.
Did you
What's
chuckle?
that?
Your thresholds. Your nature things
yeah.
that you can find inspiring. That's the mechanic I like. It's like some of us can look at a statue and feel nothing. Some of us can listen to music and be brought to tears immediately.
Well, I think in a lot of ways, I think that this sort of conflict is going to be at the root of what Sealy versus Unsealy means in the new edition.
But that's why I'm like that's what informs my decision being against it being like hard one season. I don't see that as being writing that into the genre of being like and we're all stuck here. This is what's happening. It's way too close to APOC.
No. That's this. It's completely different from APOC. Here's my thought on the matter. Okay, APOC and Apocalypse, as way Apocalypse has always been, is you are in a world balanced on the edge of a knife. At any moment, everything's gone. Like it is similar to the Cold War. Somebody can push a button and it's all over. The apocalypse could come. We are all fucked. It's done.
Iggy sings Luke Balloons in the background.
Iggy sings Luke Balloons in the background. But
Sure.
a Changeling game in an autumn Changeling game, of the 3 examples, an autumn Changeling game where you're on the edge of winter, like the old game, works out to be very much the same thing. Nobody knows what winter is going to mean. Is it going to be the Thimble winter? Is it going to be the end of everything? Oh my god, we have to hold on, save the glamour, hold on, hold on, hold on. But that holding action is exactly what is at the core of APOC. But if you go for say a high winter game after the solstice, but still cold, spring is coming. We don't know what that world is going to be. It might come. Maybe it is a Thimble winter. But we're here. It's no longer a holding action against the man fucking you. We are now beyond that.
We're trying to survive.
Toba has already gone off. We are now living in the radioactive fallout and getting by, and we are here, and we made it. So what's that story look like? That is a story I would love to explore because it's not what I've seen.
Okay, I don't know.
As a game world, I'm not talking about metatextually looking at the whole of reality and judging it by one of 4 seasons. I'm saying game design, what would be the best game? And in my opinion, I think the winter game gives you the most options.
I just think
And you
that
can't- in
apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic, I just don't know if it engenders even the type of conversation we're having.
Well, it's not post-apocalyptic because it turned out not to be an apocalypse. That's the point. Winter happened, and just like all winters that we experience in all of our lives, winter is not the end of the world. Winter is the world resting for a moment.
Winter being the end is a she lie, because we have an entire kith that was literally born out of the cold and winter, out of the hunger. So the idea, that's the whole bit. The she were lying. They're like, winter's terrible, bad things happen. Oh no, there's a glamour in starvation. There's a glamour in scrabbling for survival. There's things that can be born in that darkness and that harshness that the she didn't want. So they lied to you, and they tried to get you to hold off winter. They wanted an endless summer, and they didn't get what they wanted, so fuck them. They left. They came back. They
Well,
left
and
again.
that's another reason why I think they're going to bring the she lower and everybody else up, because the world didn't end, and the primary evidence of this is they're going to publish a new edition. And the game is going to keep going, and they're going to keep having to make more material so the players can actually play the goddamn game.
Well,
that has more to do with my unscratchable itch, my insatiable addiction for Changeling.
Well, also, just moving past millennialism as a concept, while it is core to apocalypse, I don't think you can escape it.
No.
That millennialism of we are living in the Cold War and we all want to be dead, 1991 eventually happens. The Cold War ends.
Yes.
We wake up the next morning and realize, oh my god, the world isn't ending. What the fuck are we going to do with it? Which has been the core...
That's worse in a way.
Yeah.
Knowing you're going to live. Now you're like, oh, I got... Because
That is the core in my opinion, the core philosophical conflict of the last 25 years is realizing, oh my god, we're not dying. What the fuck are we gonna do? That is great. I haven't seen a game explore that space.
I'm 30.
Still sort of.
I wake up at 35.
Delicious.
I wake up at 35 and I realize I might actually need that retirement fund. But I'm desperate to hold on to the bits of imagination that make my life even remotely livable.
Right, well, I mean, this is why intrinsically I dislike just most Western and Eastern eschatologies as being nothing but ego assuagement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it is.
If the world's about to end, you don't have to feel bad because you're not going to miss out on anything, and everybody after you is basically bone too. You don't have to worry about your bills. You don't have to worry about that weird pain in your leg.
You don't have to worry about making restitution for all the people you've wronged.
Right.
You can just
It's all
ignore
coming-
the guilt in the back of your head.
Absolutely, it's all coming to an end.
Even the second best eschatology we've developed after the Cold War, things like global warming, things like that, are on a longer, a quantitatively and qualitatively different time horizon. During the Cold War, the world could end while you were sleeping one night. It could just be over. We're talking about global
And no
warming.
matter how much I
environmental
hope,
collapse.
we're still here.
Yes. But environmental collapse, we're talking a much longer time horizon. That is a very different story. And I just think it's really interesting. I don't think we've really come to grips with it. I think
That's
there's
why
a lot
we
to
need
say.
zombies, so the world can end while I'm still
Right,
young
that's
enough to
why-
fight.
That's why everyone has a hard-on for zombie apocalypses. Because
most
it gives you...
apocalypses.
Well, yeah,
Almost all apocalypses.
Every generation is obsessed that this is the last generation and the world is ending because for them, it is.
Yeah, and the only way to let your ego not just scream silently in the back of your own mind
I let
is
that happen.
to try
It's-
to
it
believe. For
lulls
some
me.
people, it comforts them that, well, it's all coming to an end anyway.
Mhm.
And that's, don't get me wrong, that's part of the denouement of Apocalypse. It's in the game name, Werewolf, the
Yeah,
Apocalypse. So apocalyptic and
That's actually
spirituality is
living
huge.
means you have to live with the STD you caught from the apocalypse orgy. Like now you have to get pills and you have to get the cream. It's a hassle.
Living
And
on
that's a
is
cultural thing. That's not even an individual thing.
it plays into my favorite slew of like, kid, your parents miss you. Get a job. It didn't all end. You gotta pay your bills. You left your sister at home with that monster.
She's sick now.
Yeah. She doesn't have medicine.
She goes to bed every night and she misses
I'm
it.
trying to stage whisper being a slua. This is the one role-playing challenge I have for being a slua.
Whispering?
I'm not a whisperer.
I'll put it on your Facebook.
But that's why.
I know, you did.
But
And
that's
it's true.
But that's where like the peri-apocalypse level of apocalypse doesn't. I don't think it works for Changeling. One, because it plays out too similarly, and two, I don't think Changeling's world can exist on that knife edge too long. Eventually, the season has to change. You know, you can't just keep it being autumn forever. The world has to move forward. It's been 20-something years. I think we have to be in winter now. And I think narratively, it's a great story.
I would like to digress back to Werewolf and larger
Oh,
gaming. Or not just Werewolf.
I'll be
but
back. Let me know.
we're going to be psyched about pretty much every new release announcement that happens in White Wolf to different levels. He's going to fanboy out about Changeling the Dreaming. I'm going to be equally excited and terrified at a new Wraith if they
not
ever
gonna
get
happen.
around to it.
It's not going to happen.
You say that.
Wraith is dead.
The,
Get it?
that's hilarious. Every book they make is the
So if
potential.
you lost the Weaver one, get a job, son.
Yes. Every book that they come out with, and this isn't. I don't want to encourage the White Wolf writers to get into that sort of publish or perish mode where they just keep pushing splat books to stay in business because they got bills to pay. I mean, I respect that that's part of life. Right. Right. But it does lead to the potential for a richer, more well-informed game world where you don't have to dial everything. Werewolves don't have to have potent celerity and fortitude. They have their own book. They have their own thing. You can read it. You can understand it, and it can more inform the werewolves in your world. Same thing with the changelings in your world. You could have had them in your game before, but you had to sort of dial in rules and give them different combinations of disciplines or gifts or whatever. You're better served as an ST having more options. And while it's still, I guess, at
How many
least
copies do you have?
at least a couple of years off. That's
Hang on.
impressive.
Look at this.
I've been waiting.
Look at this.
I have been waiting for so many.
Have you come up with the terms?
It's been 84 years.
Yeah, have you come up with the terms?
What?
You said
You wanted some sort of contest or whatever.
Oh no, I haven't come up with the terms because I realized I'm not going to let these books go. We were going to have a contest.
Okay, never mind.
We were going to have a contest to give these books away, but then I realized none of you could ever appreciate them as much as I do. So no, go away. These are my books now, all of them.
But they've always been your books. You had a moment of graciousness and you lost
and
it.
it went away
Huh,
after
it
talking to
passed.
Bucky.
Like a
It's the
cloud
hat.
in front of the sun. It's the
the
head's the hat.
That's the hat.
It's the hat.
Mine, I'll bite you.
No, we're gonna have a contest. It's gonna be the downtime between. We're gonna have a contest. It's gonna be in the downtime between this show and the next show. And I'm thinking, I'm not positive yet. We're gonna put the contest up tomorrow. But I'm thinking the contest is whoever gives us the best topic, the topic that can get all three of us agree, or the most popular topic, we'll put it up.
Getting all three of us agree is like,
it's impossible.
yeah, that's
But whoever comes up with the topic we use in the next show, we'll call you or we'll contact you on Facebook more likely, and I'll send you a copy of the Old Shining Host, which is
inspire us.
which
Give us glamour,
yeah,
and you will
if
get
you
a
give me
book.
glamour, you get a book, and it's valued at probably more than the postage that it'll cost me to send you. So
You can check Drive Thru RPG's price. I'm sure it's shockingly expensive.
Well, that's for the PDF. So
Wraith, the continuing license. Big, and sometimes I do love
the whole point of Wraith is that sometimes that dead is better, and they should just let that game die. Just let it go.
But to Bucky's point, actually, I think where he was going with this is that while Wraith is nobody, it's hard to sell for me as a national guy. I could imagine having 40 Wraith games with like 30 players each, like doing
I
crazy.
could, and I can
But
only get so hard.
Let me get there.
Should this game be played with an erection?
But Wraith is the ultimate supporting genre. It is the perfect
It is.
supporting genre for every other game.
It really
Yeah,
is.
Which
does.
is why-
it ruins every game it touches. You're right.
Which is why, at the very least, a small splat book for Wraith would be awesome, because Wraith supports every other genre and makes it richer.
Every other genre has a thing about what happens when you die, and then Wraith tells them, "Nope, you're all wrong."
No. There's no.
There's actually no conflicts. No.
Exactly. Werewolves, something happens to them when they die. They go back in the cycle. They don't get the afterlife
Their
that
kinfolk
regular
can.
people do.
They do. Yeah, the kinfolk can be wraiths, but the
Yeah.
werewolf are trapped within the cycles of the world as long as the world endures.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Much
they're-
like the changelings.
but their kinfolk can, and it's just like, ugh, really, just let us have our own afterlife. Really, you're interfering with our mythos.
But it's not really an afterlife.
That's
It's like
saying
it's
there shouldn't be vampires in the goddamn game. You need stuff like that.
The Vampire is a game. You guys were positing that Wraith is a great supporting genre, and I think it takes away from each of those genres.
I disagree.
You
And
can.
most of the games have a good inroad to them. Striders, Slua, what else? Giovanni, Harbingers of Skulls.
Slow as he goes.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's
Yeah.
true.
I'm glad you think my list is accurate of good inroads between the genres and rates.
I don't know.
it's-
I've played with a lot of Striders.
if you're ever going to have if there was ever going to be an OWAD zoo game again, I think in a lot of ways wraiths are the gluons that hold these disparate particles together. Wraiths get everybody in the same room, and I think
Did you?
I think we'd be well served to have a Wraith splat book. That's all I'm saying.
It's my favorite genre, less for the
Don't
genre and more for.
I'm saying
other
this right at
things.
the devs. Your time is better spent getting coffee to stay awake to type out Changeling. Bang that shit out. That's a winner.
Any theoretical
just
rate depths.
Have a moment there.
Yeah, no, I absolutely despise Wraith. And it's not just because you guys liked it. That is part of it.
In any event, to get on to, we have two recurring things that we do every episode now. One is discuss
here we go, yeah.
a tribe and a pharaoh, and since it's Mother's Day, we have that posited. And the other thing I want to discuss was bleed and pre-bleed, and sort of, I guess, start a conversation about reacting to some of the thoughts that are floating around in our particular subculture and whether or not they're healthy or good.
No,
For
no, done.
Why don't we start
This
by
is-
defining our terms?
This is one of the few times that I think me and Iggy are going to agree a lot.
Well, I will change my mind.
Right, maybe.
I'd rather be right.
So, are the people out in the ether familiar with the concept of bleed? I mean, I think that's.
Let's assume they're not, or assuming people watching it later aren't.
Define your
Okay.
terms. Because this is
So-
if these are the terms we're going to be arguing over, you owe it to us to define them.
No, and that's true. I'm a firm believer in that. As far as I can tell, and while there are definitions in different articles that sort of discuss different things, bleed is intrinsically the investment between you and your character, and the bleed over connection between you as the person and you as the character, and how those affect each other. So, for example, the grief you feel when your character dies is often described as bleed. Like that sort of thing, it carries over to you. You're sad, you cry, you want to mourn their loss, that sort of thing. It's the bleed over effect. I mean, I think that's where the word comes from.
Oh, I have a question about bleed.
You ask away.
Okay.
You don't even have to
Are-
type your
and,
questions.
and I want to put it to the people out there in TV land. Do you define bleed as only one way? And by that I mean there are players who, as people, I cannot stand. I despise them as human beings. I loathe them. Like seeing them makes me angry.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't be the case with my character meeting their character for the first time. But I would be a liar if I said that I 100% treated the characters of the people that I can't stand as cordially as I probably should as my character.
Oh, no, absolutely. I was only describing the crossover in the one direction, but it is in the other. And bleed does, I think, absolutely goes both ways.
Are we going to be addressing that as well? Because
Yes, absolutely.
Because man, if I'm guilty of any RP sin,
I think almost every play. This is why a lot of games tend to end up having clicks. people want to game with their friends.
no, it's not even that. I'll game with strangers. I just don't want to game with people I hate.
Right, and that's also a thing because you carry the negativeness with you, or any opinions with you into your character that you have, and this is a problem. And there's multiple problems with bleed in our community, and I think most of my thing is responding to those problems with a couple of points. pre-bleed, I also want to discuss as indistinguishable from hype. I don't think I can comprehend. There was a big article written about it that people were surprised, or the article writer was surprised, that pre-bleed was a thing. People were super psyched about characters they haven't even played yet. And I read this article.
More psyched about characters I haven't played than characters
Right. I have
you haven't been
this,
disappointed yet.
I literally had this article open, and in the other tab, people complaining like the world was ending about what was going on with the Sabres franchise. And then how Buffalo was completely fucking up the draft. And I was like, you were surprised about people's over-investment into things that haven't even happened yet. And this came as like a shock that they're overly emotionally involved. And I think that's sort of the poison pill part of Bleed that I don't like as a concept.
Okay.
And just to unpack that real quick, and then I do want to sort of hear what people out there have to think. Gamers want to define themselves and carve out their own niche as a subculture. Like, that's a thing. All subcultures want to do that, whether you're gardeners or you're knitters or whatever.
You have to.
Right.
Otherwise, you're not a subculture.
Right. Well, it helps define yourself and all that stuff. Some of the efforts to do that are perfectly healthy. Other efforts to do that typically, especially in gaming, tend to skirt the negative, if not be outright negative. And I think Bleed is a great example of where gamers think that they're either special or different from the general population. Because of Bleed, realize that it's a problem, and then also self-delude themselves into thinking that they aren't actively encouraging Bleed and both directions, and the downsides that come with it. And I think with
being ignorant of the issues with Bleed are probably more dangerous than the Bleed itself, bro. That's just my, because like
I would agree with that.
Because I'm aware as a Yankees fan that when I walk through if I'm in Boston and I get into the stands and I'm decked out top to toe in
Jeter
wear, and the Yankees spank Boston as God intends, that I might have a rough time post-game getting to my car.
Idea that only gamers have Bleed, an over-emotional investment into something that's completely fictional and, quote, just a game. Now, there is a sentiment that it isn't just a game, it's also art and all that.
Bleed can be positive because it's called investment.
Absolutely.
If you're not invested in you won't ever have any Bleed if you have absolutely no investment. And if that's the case, take up an inning.
Yeah, no. I'm not saying Bleed is universally bad. I'm saying as it's conceptualized, a lot of people are taking investment and over-investment and just having one term. Or one word. Because we don't really call it overbleed. We just call it Bleed. This affects the general society as much, if not more, than it affects gamers. Because while you might play Tremere, right, and the current thing is shit on all the players who play Tremere. Right?
I do. As often,
right? It's all Tremere piece of shit, and that's hilarious. But it's the exact same thing that happens with sports, and just happened earlier when we brought up the accursed Patriots and their Wizard King with Tom Brady.
Minute phones being devoured by dogs.
Right. So the idea that carves us out as different, or that we don't have to deal with the problems of Bleed from that investment, is a disservice to the gaming community. You need to focus on Bleed, what's good and bad about it, positive investment and whatnot. But gamers shouldn't shit themselves that this is in any way different than pretty much any other fandom. And it's even more occurring in the general society than it is, because as far as I know, nobody's been stabbed for being in the wrong clan yet. But I really wouldn't wear that Jeter jersey in half of Beantown. I really wouldn't.
Physically,
unsafe. Yeah, I'm not. That's not a joke. As a Bills fan, I've been to Boston a bunch. I mean, they give less of a shit about us
because we're losing.
Yeah. Right.
Because we're on the wrong.
I'll tell you this: Patriots fans, they deal with a lot of shit at Ralph Wilson Stadium.
We're not as bad as it's
not as bad as Yankees and Red Sox.
There's some stadiums where you don't go wearing the opposite. I don't sit in the middle of Raiders fans if I'm wearing the wrong jersey. Some things that aren't done. Hell, even Pokemon Go locally had a tasing over a gym. That is not an exaggeration.
There was a tasing over a gym.
Somebody was trying to take a gym. A person whose team owned that gym was very upset, asked them to stop. They said no. tasing followed. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it comes back to
Hashtag Team Instinct.
general human tribalism.
I wear blue and red, but I bleed gold.
So, yeah, I don't think that.
There is no shelter from the storm.
There is not.
Right.
No.
We need to have healthier conversations about bleed that are more honest than I think what has been going on certain blogs, and what certain people bring up as either being healthy or unhealthy, and ways of dealing with it. You want gamers to be safe and in a good place, to either do the good parts of bleed, like as we said in previous episodes, maybe you have some stuff you want to work on or work out.
I mean, for some people, playing certain characters has made them a better person.
Right.
Just because they get to explore that space for themselves.
Thank you, Changeling.
It could be very therapeutic.
Changeling's why I help heal the sick.
Right.
Well, why don't we take a moment?
Sure.
This is a story about positive bleed for Iggy.
Oh yeah. Actually, I kind of call it positive Mary Suing.
Sure.
Reverse Mary.
Reverse Mary Suing.
You wanted to become the character.
I wanted to become like I based the character on myself, and actually it was a double-faceted character. I mean, obviously, so I based the character on what I thought my good points at the time were. The character made decisions, and I try to make as high-minded and as noble decisions as I could as the character. And then I looked at the character decisions as a person and said to myself, that's a stunningly good idea. Why don't I do those things? So it was basically the character took me along on a wild ride through what was most of my early adulthood. And
Sid was basically
Sid Steelskinner Troll that I played
was basically made out of your better angels.
Yes.
Stapled and duct taped together to be a better human being.
Yeah, and it's funny because I owe Rich, who may one day watch this. I made a dual. I know it's kind of corny to talk about your own characters later, but I made
But we're getting to a point. It's on topic.
Yeah, I made a double-barreled origins, a double-barrel background. There was a red cap who was made of my darker nature, and there was a troll was made of my better angels, and they had a conflict in the background, and I went to the storyteller and said, you pick who lives, and that's the one I play. And since the game desperately needed heroes at the time, he picked Sid Steelskin. And then by playing that character, I ended up following my better angels and making some choices, and here I am as an adult who has at one point worn a uniform for his country and also is now a nurse, though my character was a pediatric oncology nurse, and I would slit my wrists trying to do that now.
I think we want the Changeling writers' heads to be able to fit through doors, and thanking your entire gravitas as a human being on Changeling.
Changeling has indirectly saved, I want to say, several hundred lives. But not that one. That Banshee whale was my daughter. Excuse me.
I didn't even think we were being that loud.
We weren't.
We'll have Iggy right back after this short break in the bleed discussion.
But while we talk about the positivity, I mean, there is negativity. People are hurt by their characters. I mean, that does happen. Or things happen to their characters that hurt them.
Here's my issue. That's not necessarily a downside until it goes to an unhealthy place or an unhealthy level, right? If your character dies, you shouldn't be pondering snuffing it because there's nothing left to live for. That's clearly unhealthy.
Well, I think it's very interesting to me as a person to get to explore a character dying because I've never really gotten around to that yet. So I think that's a cool space to explore.
It's low on my list.
Yeah, no.
Despite being a Wraith fan.
But as a character, you can do that. But for some people, that really hurts, and it physically hurts them.
And I understand that. My bone to pick is seeing the problems of bleed and then simultaneously doing all of the bad stuff that sports fans do, and that are baked into the system and the culture, right? The games are pretty much premised on you internalizing a lot of this negativity and being like, what are you going to play? Or you're playing this? Cool. You're in our in-group. Shit on everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's now part of your job. And if you don't shit on them enough, you're a bad role player. Mm-hmm. Right? You shouldn't be friends with that venture as a Brujah because now you're Brujahing bad. Mm-hmm. So you need more bleed in your life. You need to, take your biases.
Here's the thing. I mean, sometimes you can play so hard that you incur bleed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like you shit on somebody so hard during the game that they can't really be your friend.
Right, I understand. And the thing is, and then we're like wondering why, like, you know, it's weird how so many gamers they take it so personally when you shit all over them and kill their character, and it's like, well, yeah, there's gonna be some bleed over. There's a certain point where you do have to recognize that it is just a game. And a lot of these articles go into like, it's not just a game. We all know that. Look, the NFL's worth billions of dollars with it be. There's whole people who've done nothing but go to medical school and become doctors to be their sports physicians. Men have died on the field. It's still just a game, right? It's also a sport and a career and all these other things, but it is just a game. And gaming, also just a game.
Let me ask you. All right, here's an example of bleed or care or investment that I want to raise. How many of our fans have supernatural tattoos? I know several. How many of you guys have tattoos of clans, houses, tribes, kits?
A lot of people do. Yeah.
How many people have Bills tattoos? How many people have 49ers or Cowboy tattoos?
Oh my God, infinitely more.
New York
so
Yankees,
many
New
orders
York
of
Knicks.
magnitude of scale.
These
But then
people-
I think that's because there's more of them.
Yeah, but these people paid hundreds, if they're dozens of dollars if they're stupid, hundreds or thousands if they have a brain in their head, of dollars getting their bodies permanently marked for a connection to a team that may up and move to a different city at some point.
Right, and they will
Rams.
never be on that team.
Yeah,
And that's the
they'll
other
never.
thing. That and the emotional investment, it's such a good analogy. And I know that most gamers almost pride themselves in not giving a shit about sports ball, but
Oh my god.
people get psyched about the draft. They get psyched about all these things that have nothing to
It
do
goes
with
the
them.
other way around. Like fantasy football is for people who don't understand that barbarians are awesome, but they want to play D&D with.
No. Look, I'm not making a judgment call. Enjoy your hobbies. As somebody who has a bunch of other hobbies that aren't like directly gaming, there's other types. Of
Trolling the
gaming.
internet is not a hobby.
Well, it's Changeling.
Yeah. So, what do you guys think? That's another thing. Is how do you feel about the conversation about bleed currently? Do you think it's a good conversation? What do you think needs to happen to make, as you know, this segment is about making our gaming culture better? I mean, my stance may seem axiomatic, but I think we need to be blowing a little bit less smoke and being a little bit more realistic. But I can't read that from there. My phone's dying.
It's okay. No one's really commented
You
yet.
spend years doing a thing, you get invested, and that's a great comment. The converse is kind of a question. Would you spend years doing a thing if you didn't? I would. Somebody's like, I don't actually like LARPing. You've been LARPing for 15 years. Yeah, I don't care for it. You scare me. I don't know what's wrong with it. Like, do you have that much free time? They're like the dude on the internet in an argument on a thread who's responding till 2 a.m. saying he doesn't care. You care, bro.
That dude though.
And that caring isn't necessarily a bad thing, but again, it does. People do get hurt, and creating boundaries between yourself and your character is very important. Some people struggle with that.
Yeah, I saw another article distinguishing boundaries and barriers, right? And I think that's also another important discussion, right? And defining those the author defined the terms basically as boundaries are something that in a place of trust you can push boundaries, right? That's a part of a game I would explore with you. I trust you as a player in ST. Barriers are just like, nope, I'm not gaming that. I've got a lot of those spaces. One of the reasons I'm not as thrilled about Changeling is I got creeped out by Changeling hard, fast, and early, and I was like, all right.
That was always a problem with the game.
Nope. I cannot. I don't want to RP with people pretending to be 8. It's so fucked up to me. I don't want them to then be sexy princesses and their face seeming and half aphrodisia. It's bile-inducing. Like, I throw up in my mouth thinking about it. It's gross. It's something that some people who are on certain lists aren't allowed to do by law because it's bad for them, because it will encourage them to reoffend. There's so many problems there. So the idea that we might guffaw middle-aged changelings, the entire game needs to get older.
I don't know. I guess that's the stick end of it, but the carrot end of it is, dude, that would be so much awesome. Like middle-aged changelings.
Oh god, I thought you were talking about the other
No.
thing. I was like, Where you
Why would you think for a second I would mean that?
From smoke signals put up by BNS, I'm pretty confident that childlings are gone, as
Good.
they have to be.
Fuck them. They're not strong enough to hold the glamour anyway. Something. Make up something. As long as I still get to play whatever age is called Grumps. It's so apropos to me.
I would love to play the equivalent of a childling in middle age. I think that would be a fascinating role playing experience.
You're new to this.
You're overwhelmed. Well,
It's the same story as the bit.
but you're overwhelmed by your glamour.
Yeah.
It destroys your life.
I would love a bitten for Changeling. Like, oh, I got slapped with a glamour-infused token. I got slipped a glamour Mickey, and now I'm part of this world.
Yeah, because apparently you were forgotten or chrysalis or whatever, but you were never going to wake up, and somebody was like, oh, I'm going to do a good deed and give them the glamour battles. And you're like, thank you for this living nightmare I'm now in.
Well, you gotta imagine for in the old world. Oh God, we're going back to Changeling. Sorry.
All right, yeah. That's all right.
I know.
I did it too.
regret
No.
nothing.
I did it too, and I brought it up.
Chatting about Changeling.
Is there anything about
that's coming up?
chat about what we are talking about?
This is actually something I want to talk about. 24-hour game seems to be heavily pushed away from, and people have negative views on it. But can the 24-hour game be okay? Let me get this one.
I've done a lot of talking.
Yeah. There are two things about
Your microwave, coffee.
CO2 alarm.
No.
No, it would be way louder.
Oh my god, yeah.
Oh, it turned off. That means it's fine. No reason to check.
Okay. That being said, there are two.
Oh wait, you're kidding.
I am kidding.
Yeah.
Go check that.
When people talk about the 24-hour game, I think of two general things. One is the idea that away from your physical session, as sort of an a la carte thing, you want to have more RP. So you interact with people online, on IRC, in other places, and you get more character development and character interaction. I think that's fine. I think that's 100% fine. The problem that develops, if it's not done very carefully by the storytellers, is the 24-hour game where if you're not checking your email or logging into this chat room every single day, you're going to fall behind in the story, you're not going to be involved in the main plot.
You effectively can't play.
You effectively can't play. So, I mean, 24-hour game is a la carte is great. It's amazing. It's a huge value add. It's so much fun.
It has to be player side.
Mm-hmm.
And just to dovetail on that,
Yeah.
for two main reasons,
Mm-hmm.
both of which agree with your points, just to start out though. One, your STs aren't paid. All right? They're not your on-call fucking butler for plot. You can't just bug them all the time and be like, I really want to run that scene. You're going to have to wait. Like, if they want to run your scene, awesome. If they don't, you got to straight fuck off. It is not fair to them as human beings for you to impose that level of responsibility on them.
Or the reverse of that.
There's a game where we played where one of the STs expressed a great issue with having players, this is back in the days of AOL Instant Messenger, aim him at 2 in the morning, and his wife's like, why is this young lady sending you messages at 2 in the morning? This seems weird.
And well, people volunteer for those positions. The other part I want to say, or you respond. I'll get to the second thing.
The other half of that, that's the player end. There is a storyteller end to this, though. And storytellers have to be very careful when they're doing downtime things, that while you want to bring out plot cookies and increase engagement and work things towards building your story, you don't want to make the mandatory bits be online, because at that point you make online mandatory.
Yes.
And which is
terrible.
huge as a storyteller. Because short term, it's great because you're getting engagement from the players who are in the room. You're creating
on the forum.
Or on the forum. Yeah, in the room.
Creating disengagement.
You're creating disengagement from one, the players who aren't there, and two, the players who are involved in this feel an increasing need to be more and more involved to maintain themselves at the forefront of the story. So storyteller-wise, I think while the player end is important, the storyteller end is even more important because it has to be done in the background and subtly. You have to allow the downtime action without making the downtime action mandatory.
Yeah,
which is very difficult.
I think the best, for me, formulation of this that came up was Last Chronicle, and it basically came down to the fact that if you weren't going to be on the forums, you couldn't be alpha of the set. Period. Like the non-responsiveness of emails, not at game, not even like in general, like when they had a chance to talk to these people.
Wait, it wasn't the alpha. That wasn't the big one. It was the master challenges.
Yeah. The MC wasn't available during the downtime to handle their downtime challenges with each other.
That was the big issue.
And that is unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable from the players.
Yeah.
The players cannot ask that of the other players. It's not fair, and it's damaging to the game. And it's hurting themselves because
Yes.
it's creating more of a responsibility for themselves to be involved in downtime. And you might have that time this month or next month. But 6 months from now, when suddenly it's being demanded that you be in this scene, and you really can't be at this scene, but you've set it up where it's vital to your story.
But you're
your
at a
character.
funeral or a christening, whether it's bad
Because
news or
life
good.
fucking happens,
I
and
say-
real life
I-
first.
I say this at 10 o'clock on Mother's Day as I'm sitting next to two of my friends talking about werewolves and chatting about changelings.
This is for them, Iggy. This is a sacrifice.
It's for the people.
So is
I
Big
just
Astro
get-
Challenge. Oh. That's a different one.
Oh, good. We have
It's
a
a
wide
smoke
variety of
alarm.
ones.
I'm cooking. I should probably pay attention to the stuff.
Yes. But I mean, that's the big thing, and that's something that we can all do better at. It's just buying into that positive,
Easily distracted.
metagame where we overlook those things that allow people to be able to play in the game, even if it makes our own at the moment interaction with the game a little bit weaker.
I'm fine with it being a value add. Cannot be an onus.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's my same opinion.
Nope, it can't. It's value adds become onuses. Just like World of Warcraft when they used to have. Let me finish.
Okay, all right.
World of Warcraft, the
yeah.
experience bumps.
Mhm.
You just make what was a punishment, the non-punishment state. You make that a positive,
Mhm.
and you could call that a bonus. People won't complain about it, but game mechanic effect wise, people will treat it as the same. Like they will expect you to do those things.
Well, that's a lot of what we did. Our design perspective was designing the VIP for Werewolf this time. Is we try to make it things like the equivalent of alternate skins and things like that.
Pay for pretty instead of pay to win.
I don't want to get too much into that because I have honestly zero insight into what's going on with the vampire side of it. But that was our perspective on Werewolf, is that the VIP stuff, the out-of-game stuff you do for the group, will give you pretty skins.
Some
and
cool stuff
backgrounds,
in your
some cool
background.
backgrounds.
It shouldn't be like
I like my hyena Warwick a lot.
right.
It doesn't change how I
Right,
play.
it doesn't change
which is
or-
poorly.
Right.
But
It shouldn't get you like, oh, also you can get Ragabash gifts.
Mhm.
I think that's personally that's a direction I wouldn't want to see it go in.
Yeah, and I think freemium like that has been shown to be very effective in other games for increasing engagement while not creating an onus on the free-to-play player that they can't play the
Yeah.
game.
And this goes all the way back to when it was first becoming popular in games. It was like, oh, you can buy the gold-plated AK. What does it do? It has all the same stats as the regular AK, but it's gold, and people will just flock to that.
Yeah,
It's
same
like-
thing with Punching Hitler. Yeah.
Right. It's like, oh, I was involved in the Civil War, and I have a cool story about that. Does that give you access to like different Farah powers? No, but it's cool for you because it's something you're interested
might
in.
actually be a downside for you.
Right.
But
And
it's a story for you.
it's story,
Mhm.
and that's I'm
we're-
completely fine.
We're gonna have to take a time and look at some of the comments that people.
Sure.
Well, that's why I can't.
Iggy's gonna Sherpa us. Iggy's gonna Sherpa us.
Even with
Okay,
the guys
so
I have,
here's
I
a
can't
question:
do
if a
that.
person plays a character weekly for 3 years and then that character dies, is that person allowed to cry? In the U.S. culture, if they're in their mid-20s,
Absolutely.
you are allowed to
Yeah.
cry. In fact, you should probably, if your character dies and you are crying, that increases the impact for everybody else. But if you're crying about something, this is it not 2017? Like, are we not modern people? You should, if you feel the emotional onus to cry, you should be crying.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be, I want to cry. I need to judge the value of this is worthy of tears. It doesn't pass that rubric. Then cry. No, you want to cry. Cry.
And one of my favorite things we did in Revised World, I'm sorry.
Just a
What-
slight aside on that, but go ahead.
One of my favorite things we did in the last Revised Chronicle, and I'm still looking at whether it's even possible now, is when somebody has their character die and they're feeling really emotional about it, really raw about it, letting their ancestor spirit appear for that last time to
Have
give
a
them
funeral.
closure, a funeral. This
That
is something
didn't
we've
translate
lost.
into BNS though.
But-
They didn't put the rights in or any of those powers.
But
They just-
You can make friends.
my
Okay.
point isn't that.
yeah, yeah.
My point is that one of the things we as players can do to support that player who's heard about their character dying is not just moving on like nothing happened. Because that happens a lot, where a character will die and we're like, well, that character's dead. I'm moving on with the night. Take a moment.
Hey, you died. I've got this great new character concept that you could play that would
But
really help me out.
I just lost my character.
No, he's got all the
Have you
best
considered
stats.
being a daughter of Kakao?
No,
need one.
I'm not ready to talk about re-rolling yet, guys. I just died. Give me
Right.
a break.
Having that emotional space is incredibly important.
And I think as players, we can support that and make the games better by honoring that more in character. Have IC funerals. Let the player be there. Like, things like that. Like, I think those are great things they add to the world. And
it's healthy. It's way healthier.
And it gives death stakes.
Okay.
It gives death stakes. It makes the game better. It gives the player a chance to have closure and see that their character mattered to other people.
Okay. Now, that being said, somebody added the point, same story, but what if the character kept being sad for months after?
I think at that point you might have to talk to a therapist.
Yeah, this is a talk of when is your level of investment. I probably once every other year go to the casino, maybe, and about as often maybe go to Vegas for a bunch. I don't gamble much.
Gambling's not one of your habits.
No, it's just not. It's not one of my vices, but I enjoy it because it's fun. I just don't do it a lot because I hate losing money. But I'm pretty good at the games that I play, and I like the odds of them, and I do find it to be fun. Although since I've quit smoking, it's definitely not something I really.
I hate going through the casino now.
Well, there are non-smoking casinos, and like when I go,
here.
They have 6 casinos, 2 of which are non-smoking, like Fox, whatever. It doesn't fucking matter. They don't pay me. Anyway, the places I go to for fun. I have what I think is a healthy relationship with gaming. On the flip side of that, if you can't stop yourself from playing the one-armed bandit, if you can't pull yourself,
slots, not masturbation.
if you're like no, I just need one hot shoe. A blackjack, and this'll get me back even, and this'll be fine, and everything's gonna be okay. I just need to keep playing, and that's how I'm gonna get out of this hole. Is that it's the same emotional problem and the same sort of, and they've done this neurological study on a lot of things that are addictive without being necessarily addictive in the sense of like opioids put receptors in the brain, but anything that you enjoy is habit forming, and often maladaptive. Please post that. If you can't get over your character's death at a certain, there's really no arbitrary point, but see a professional. And I don't say that with judgment or as a pejorative. You have to. Especially as an adult, you got to be 18 to be in MES. Everybody playing the game is adults, so you need to treat your problems like an adult, or at least putatively as adults should when we use that term.
There is one upside to this organization that it's intrinsic to the nature of the org that I think helps deal with that, is that the stories end. You could play a character for 3 years. I could be really invested in 3 years. The Chronicle's probably going to end anywhere from 3 to 5 years. 5 years. 5 years is a long time to do anything. I've been lifting weights for a couple of years, and I'm really invested in that. However, in another org I was in, there was a player who had been playing a character for, I want to say, 12 to 17 years.
Yeah, it was closer to 17, and I think that's practically a diagnosable sign for mental illness.
So, I'm going to step away from that one.
So, I'm not touching that. Again.
So she's been playing.
I'm not a therapist. Again, I'm not okay with that.
Well, so she'd been playing the character for 12 to 17 years. And that other organization had, if you think you guys have a 24-hour game, you have no idea.
Yeah, it was 25 hours a day, 8 days a week,
yeah, like
370 days a year.
Hundreds of messages a day. So hundreds of messages a day, increasing your frequency for 12 to 17 years. It's basically a part-time job or a full-time job, depending on how much time you put into it. You just skip sleep. And then at 12 years, hard stop, out of nowhere. Didn't see the game coming. Was killboxed. And from what I heard, he basically had a breakdown on the floor. And I don't know that I wouldn't. It's not even that I'm saying that that person shouldn't have. I'm saying that if I did something like that for 12 years, and like actors in TV shows at the end of a 3-year run, all hug and cry. And that's their job they're paid for, and they're professionals at separation between themselves and their characters. They go to school for that. That's great. But at the end of a run or at the end of a movie wrap up, marriage is shattered during movie filmings. Love interests actually end up having affairs. Like that acting
Again,
can
this
bleed.
is why Bleed is not just a gamer thing and really cannot be put in those terms just to carve out our subcultural needs. It's not healthy.
Sylvester
Go
Stallone. Sylvester Stallone, personally, I believe, has one of the worst cases of bleed because he is convinced he's an actual legitimate fighter, and he has been hurt again and again. He asked Dolph Lundgren at one point to actually spar with him a little bit during one of the filming.
That's not a good
Dolph
idea.
Lundgren was a heavyweight karate champion
Yes,
and hit him so hard that his heart swelled, and they took him to the hospital, and the insurance company didn't want to pay because they figured that damage could only have been caused in a car accident, and Stallone was lying. So, like that is bleeding over. Like
Yeah,
you'll
That's
see,
unhealthy.
you'll see actors who play action films, Steven Seagal, begin to believe their own bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's an unhealthy level of bleeding. Somebody who's been playing a character for 12 years who has a sudden stop, I couldn't imagine them going, yeah, good game, GG, fist bump. I'm gonna go make another
Now,
character.
knowing you're walking into that session and that you were going to pay the piper and that this was your moment, this was your denouement, this is the end of your story, and knowing you're walking into that is very different from I'm playing this character, it's an established part of who I am, and this character just got ganked after 12 years out of nowhere. No lead up,
By your
no
friends.
nothing. By your friends.
By your friends.
I'm just going to point
How
this
are you
out.
gonna go for coffee afterwards with those people who were your friends who ganked your 12-year character?
This is going to be slightly hypocritical. And again, I don't like saying stories about our characters because I find nothing more boring than people telling me about their games or their stories. But that said, I played a ghoul for 7 years. I started as one person's ghoul. I got handed around a lot. I tried to stay ghoul as long as I can. He ended up in Brace, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. The point is, eventually he got to settle old scores and kill a bunch of other toons. It was awesome. Everybody in the room was happy. It was very well done. But then it came to the point of executing me. To prove my loyalty to the clan, they had my heart. They had, I was bloodbound. I never took Unbondable as a ghoul. Like, my life was completely in their hands. And watching these people, like, they struggled with killing me more than I did because they were horrified that they were about to make the decision to off a 7-year-old ghoul character. And I had to be like, all right, let's just take a moment out of the game. I'm like, guys, I played a ghoul, and he was a venture ghoul. I eventually got Serpentis, and I gave my heart to them. And I was like, I am a player who's comfortable with you just ending me.
But that's different because you played that character from the beginning, knowing that when you were playing that character.
Oh no, I bought into that.
No, you knew there was a
You
clock.
signed up for that.
I signed up for the mortality.
That's different.
I see. That's where I'm going to slightly disagree because if you were playing in any of these games, death and your character getting got is a huge part of the game.
If you're playing a vampire who's conceptually immortal and you've managed to make it past the decade mark, no matter what you may have gone into as a perception, you think you're safe.
No, and that's fair.
As somebody who played a ghoul for years and was betraying several people while betraying also those people, you knew at any moment it could come tumbling
I
down.
never betrayed my Regnants.
No, but you were playing Xanatos Roulette for quite a while.
Yes.
Oh, but it was always for the same reason, to avenge you, Brian.
Yes,
Because the city didn't deserve you.
But you knew.
I killed a Bruja who did something wrong 6 years ago. Just tore his goddamn head off.
Yes, but you knew it was a
Anyway,
house of cards
yes.
that could all come tumbling down. This person played it straight for 12 years, thought they were doing everything great, and then got got.
And I can't imagine when you sign in. You know what a good way to do it? But when you sign in, not like an IC waiver, is when you sign into a game, you should know your character can get killed, and we do that with the VSS style sheets. There is a legality.
But after you played
rating.
that character 144 live sessions, thousands of online scenes, all this background, and then it comes out of nowhere, I completely understand why.
How
that hurt.
legally binding are end license user agreements?
I mean,
Why? Because no one expects that you read them. They expect you click and go through because you've been faced with them 1,000 times.
we
And that
really
is-
mean contracts of adhesion.
Yeah.
A lot of EULAs are
Yeah.
pretty lock solid, but
Yeah.
I understand what you mean.
Well, then,
In later.
if you understood what I meant, why that whole sentence? So we're going to throw that to the side. Yes, you've got
I don't
to stop.
talk in medical terms.
You've got to stop doing that. It's naughty and irritating. So, this person has had the LARP version of a 10,000 EULAs thrown at her. and clicked every time. You expected this time she's going to go, oh yeah, I totally remember that I could get God this time. That's ridiculous.
Look, I'm not saying that the person didn't have a right to be hurt or didn't have a right to have their night ruined or collapse in hysterics or whatever happened. I just think 6 months after that, if they're still wearing black and can't hold and sitting on footstools, that's too cultural a reference, and still mourning. That's what I'm like. Still sitting Shiva. I'm like, that's too cultural too. Still mourning. There's a certain point where
if you get your character killed, or your character gets killed, and you're like, you know what? I think I've done everything I want to do with LARP, and you just go away because you can't deal with it. Is that as bad? Because I know.
I think that's fine.
Because I know people who have gotten God and they left LARP. In fact, I was responsible for one of them basically not coming back. I killed him so hard he quit.
I almost think that that's more healthy, because at least then you're acknowledging that you have an overinvestment. That's the gambler who's like, or the opioid user who's like, you know, I tried it, now my blood's on fire, and I feel like if I don't do it again, I'll die. So this is something I need to never do again. Like, there's almost a responsibility there that I find somewhat admirable of, like, I'm not cut out for this. I can't, especially the people who come to gaming as like as an art form, the non-gamers who love LARPing, is like, I can't do all this improv and get invested and then have some dude just blow my face off with a shotgun and then all that work is done. Like, I'm not built for that. I'm not okay with that. I didn't come from that. I'm not in that headspace. And then they're just like, I'm out. It might suck for the game, but I have to respect that decision. I really do.
Okay.
They probably just shouldn't like burn all their bridges on the way out and be like, gaming's dramatic and fucking hate all these.
So, Bucky, if I understand your point about the 12-year characters, you're just saying they shouldn't feel that way.
No. That is not what I said at all.
What I'm saying is that they shouldn't be.
No. Okay. One, more Iggy. But
well,
two,
yeah.
I didn't say that at all. So you're absolutely entitled to feel like that as hard as you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's 6 months later.
Mm-hmm.
If you're still mourning that character, they are not your dead husband. There is a certain, they're not, your parent didn't just die. You didn't bury a friend. This is something you did. It was a huge part of your hobby. But you have to have a healthy headspace there.
Sid, Steel Skin, he died. The ending that happened to him in the character archetype is that he sacrificed himself doing something incredibly noble. It has been, what was the last Changeling game?
The last time you played Sid Steelskin was 2011.
That was a one shot. That was barely him. Like the last actual Changeling game.
2007.
2007. It's been 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent, I want to say, a couple $100 paying for Changeling. Not just because for the C20 game. Not just because I like Changeling, I do. And I think C20 should be made, I do. It's because I kind of felt I owed a figment of my imagination at least that much money for having existed and helping me. Like, there are bleed commitments that happen, and those, like, I still feel Dominic Lantigua rattling around in my head some days.
I guess it comes down to what we consider healthy and unhealthy. My counterpoint would be, in those intervening years, how many times have you called into work because Sid's dead? And you just can't.
No, actually, Sid makes me go to work when I don't want to.
No. Oh, well, fine. But you understand what I'm saying. They're like, well, I'm my character. I can't adult today. I can't do it. I'm calling into work. That's not healthy.
I not completely agree.
But if it's the next day, maybe you don't want to go to work on Monday if your game was on Sunday, or even Saturday. I get that, sure. But if 3 months later you're calling into work because you're in a deep depression over this,
that's why they fire you on the weekend.
See somebody. See a professional.
They fire you on the weekend.
And again, I don't see this as a pejorative. You got the hooks in deeps, and then they got yanked out hard. But there's a certain point where you have to take responsibility for your own mental health, and I say that generally being adulthood. And you have to own what your problems are and know them. It's just part of, again, this is a game of adults. We don't let the under 18 set in.
We have 15 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah. Not mentioned word 3 about Werewolf yet.
Well, I think the Bleed conversation is very instructive about Werewolf.
What other commentary do we have? I'm kind of curious.
There's the thing. I can't remember the name of the thing, but when you read a book or watch a movie, it changes you mentally. I'd say that role playing would amplify this, and 12 years of role play would fundamentally change who you are. I could see them being really upset, but we're talking a psychological thing. That's one person's comment. I guess it would depend on how you died. A heroic, noble, or dramatic death would have a different response from someone showing up to gank you for OOC reasons. My character died a heroic, noble, and honorable death in the way he went out, and that has inspired me at times where I needed it. This person got by their friends. Their OOC and IC friends.
Well, I've gotten.
Yeah, I think that's. Hang on.
Hang
I
on.
think that's downright fine. Some of my oldest characters that I've ever played.
How many times have I killed you?
You have killed 80% of my characters.
That's your foolishness for trusting.
No. And even my longest lived character that we had the best relationship with, he saved my life a million different ways and had ample opportunity. I think it's because I gave him so much opportunity to kill me that he did. It was so easy to off me. It didn't
There was
seem
no
like
challenge.
There was no challenge.
Sporting.
But I had characters I played for years and Brian killed them. And we were both just gamers LARPing together. Brian just had a tendency to kill me. Other people have also killed me. Doug killed my ghoul. I still like Doug. I mean, moved, but I mean that it wasn't because
Why
I
would
was.
you not like someone because they moved? That's just weird.
No. I'm saying he didn't move because I was like, I hate you, like or something. Anyway, doesn't matter. I have no ill will towards that, but that's just how I'm built.
But you could see how people could.
I can, and there's a point where I think that's fine. You feel what you feel. Emotions are irrational. To a point where you still have a rational self that needs to be able to take a good inward glance and be like, this might be a problem. Or at least be receptive when other people tell you. If it's been a year, your tune's dead.
Iggy dropped a building on mine once. Listen, Colin. I got nothing. Yeah, I murdered you.
Yeah.
All the time Brian killed me,
and I
he
essentially
killed me for a boon
and I
once.
essentially
I
got
killed
away
you
with it.
for a minor boon.
For a minor boon.
I killed you for a minor boon.
Yeah. I think Pat murdered me. I don't hold it against him.
Given that we only have 10 minutes left, there's no way we're going to cover tribes this
Black Furies was actually the first tribe we covered in like episode 1 about how great they are. Which I think is still online.
I could go into a frenzy about how amazing they are again.
We love our Black Furies and Java, so we're gonna have to have a delayed Mother's Day edition where we talk about
the matriarchy.
The matriarchy.
I'm sure our loving audience can keep us talking for 10 more minutes, guys. So, any questions?
Does Brian have an Excel spreadsheet of all of Bucky's dead tunes?
No, I have notches in my headboard.
He does.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on how you die. There's people ganking you for OOC reasons. Ganking you for OOC reasons is a whole different problem. We're going to cover that in an episode called Cheating and the cheating cheaters who do so.
Speaking of which, you're up next for Making a Better Community. What topic do you want to cover?
Me?
I think cheating would be great.
No.
I think you were gonna go with costuming.
You want to talk costuming?
I'm probably going to go props and costume.
Props and costuming. I'll make a note of that.
Okay.
Props and costuming.
I mean, that's what was said when we all picked one. Do you want to do cheating, or is cheaters called metagaming?
Well, let's go 1 week. Let's go 1 week. 1 week in a row. Props and costuming will be next week.
Okay.
That might be Bleed there. It was the perfect end. Yeah, Colin, that was actually... he's talking about a character I killed by dropping a building on him. You were there, I needed you gone, and my character had Architecture 5 with a spec. You had to go. There was a building, you were there, had a spec, and a hammer. They let me drop a building on him because I had 40 points in basically Architecture. And I'm like, it's on fire. It's weak, right? They're like, yeah. Like, I hit it there, it falls up. They're like, chop it. All right, bye.
And yeah, this is one of those times I almost wish we had like, I don't know, call-ins instead of just the
Oh my god, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
sort of
if we
chat
could get
on
call-ins, that'd be amazing.
You know what I want to see? You guys,
absolutely
we might not even have time to talk about it, but if you can put it on our Facebook page, I want to hear the story of the death of your tune that affected you. Don't talk about the time you killed this dude and how awesome it was. I don't want to hear that. I want to see the story of which tune died that hurt you, inspired you,
so they can win them a book.
moved you the most. And whichever one I find gives me the most glamour.
That's actually, I feel like that's in for dark. Like
No, let's go with that. That'll be
dark can be glamorous.
You gotta package it with the player's guide. You have an extra copy, and you can't run Changeling without the player's guide.
It's not for them to run. It's for them to touch.
What did you say it was? A Thalian or Dantean slew? Which type of slew am I? A damn good one at that. You said.
You're a slew of Dante Grump.
So he's an antagonist.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It plays better as a PC protagonist. It's like, yeah, you know what'd be really glamorous? Your family being able to sleep at night without wondering.
Oh,
You're
Okay, let's go Changeling. Anyway.
You're about dreamers. Your mom has a dream.
The most recent game meme was Kiss Me Bro because they announced the CTD. But anything else?
So who wants to kiff me? Any guesses?
Troll done.
Oh God.
Fuck you.
Troll done. That was easy.
You're both fucking red caps also. You know what? You're Canaan.
Have you seen me eat?
Yeah, and yet your magical powers haven't emerged. So I maintain that your appetites don't have to do with your kith
My
type.
magical powers they're plentiful and everywhere. You see them all the
I've
time.
seen you fold a slice of pizza and just drop it down your throat without chewing it.
Mm-hmm.
I can see some
Like a
points
duck.
there. Like a duck.
Just ease it down.
Oh,
Ugh, that was a terrible noise in head motion. I should never do that.
never on video for all of humanity ever.
Um,
All right. We don't actually have to go the other 7 minutes if nobody has
No,
anything to
but
ask.
we should.
I mean,
there's people.
I'd like. Let's see, Brian, what was your longest play tune?
The PC I played the longest and survived the longest was actually a character named Sean O'Connor. He was a Ventru.
I remember him.
Sean O'Connor was a very upright Ventru. He eventually got True Faith, and he eventually decided that, oh my God, what am I doing with the Camarilla? You guys are fucking monsters. I thought I was being an upright guy, but then I realized I'm surrounded by bastards. And he gave up his True Faith, walked into a room with the hunters, and gave up his character to sell out the Camarilla. And that was a hard death because I felt like the character was making me go to a place I didn't want to go. I didn't want to give up the character, but the character's story demanded that his story end at that point. And I wasn't happy about it, but that was where the story went, and I followed it, and I'm happy I did.
Did he outlive Gregory?
Gregory,
I mean,
yeah.
year-wise.
I played Gregory twice. Once in a troop game. Gregory was an Nosferatu. I played him once in a troop game, once in One World. And both times combined, it would have been longer.
Oh,
But just by itself.
What was your favorite? See, because it also had probably your best death because it's something you didn't pick.
Mhm.
What was your best death as a tomb? Besides its Elysium.
Oh, that is his best death. Bucky had an upright Camarilla character who during a Praxis seizure was in Elysium, was attacked by the other Praxis
It's kind of
claimant.
masturbatory, but I'm fine with it.
Yeah, who was attacked by another character.
I claimed Praxis.
Yep.
I was a Malkavian. I had a really terrible sheet. I'm not good at I wasn't good at the mechanics at the time.
But you got beaten down, and instead of defending yourself, to
I
the shock of the
absolutely wouldn't throw.
storytellers,
They start beating me up. They're like, roll initiative. What do you do? I'm like, I say, but this is Elysium. They're like, well, they hit you. What do you do now? I'm like, I say loudly, this is Elysium. What are you doing? And then
that's how you went down.
tortured me, and I'm like, but this is Elysium.
that was a great death.
And
Well, somebody has to take that shit seriously, or the genre fucking falls apart.
it's been a joke around here for years. And my best death was, of course, Sid Steelskin. And I'll tell you how he died if you don't remember.
I wasn't in that game. I noped out because
Permanently
the
burned all of his
children
memories.
memories. Yeah.
There's a art that lets you heal people, and it lets you heal people of serious and fatal illnesses if you burn off chunks of your face hole. So he nuked himself to heal the children's cancer ward because he was tired of it.
Mhm.
He was tired of watching kids die of cancer as a pediatric oncology nurse, and he decided that he would rather end his life being a hero than just because eventually all changelings fade away. So you'd rather burn bright once and save people than just slowly fade away.
I want to answer a question from D Magico here. Is it intentional that Farah should be staying outside the Geru Nation? Is it setting to then shun these characters? Well, I'm not really sure what you're asking. There's several possible interpretations. Geru in general shouldn't be shunning Farah who have joined the nation. If they've joined the nation and sworn to be members of it, then no, they absolutely shouldn't shun them. They're members of the nation.
Yeah.
And of course, there are different faction opinions on what that means. But Farah who is outside the nation and is of Gaia, I would think you would have a polite interaction with
Shun's
them.
a strong word. You shouldn't be shunning any of the Gaians.
I think at worst it would be the relation between a Camarilla character and an Anarch. Yeah,
I think it also depends on the Farah and the backstory.
But I don't think in general there would be any binding in general, like Geru characters should distrust and dislike Pharaoh who aren't members of the nation. I don't see any reason for
There's
that.
some stuff.
As a
baked in.
general rule, there's some characters and concepts that might make sense for it.
Well, I mean, werebears for a while were just like, I'm sorry, what'd you say, werewolves? Yeah, fuck those guys. Like, so the antipathy was somewhat mutual.
Well, and the response is shouldn't shun them outside the nation. They're allies of a sort. Well, those who have joined the nation are part of the nation, and those who aren't
Helping a lot.
And while
Or
they're
at least not in demonstrable ways.
well, it depends. This is very beholden to character concepts, but if we're talking as a general rule for all characters, looking kind of the average perspective, I think there'd be a slight amount of I don't really understand your laws or your ways, but but it seems like you're on the side of Gaia, so you're okay, I guess. Would really be the baseline opinion to take about a non-Geru nation pharaoh.
I definitely could see being touchy. I don't want to get talked at by somebody not in the nation. Some pharaoh trying to explain Gaia to me. I'd be like, good, then you should
Depends on
join
pharaoh.
the fight.
I'm talking about how I've seen non-nation pharaoh be allowed on bonds and Cairn Hearts. Well, those bonds and Cairn Hearts are controlled by the Geru nation. You are not a member of a Geru nation nor bound by its laws. Therefore, they can be polite to you, but I can think it's completely acceptable that they wouldn't let you into their sanctum sanctorum.
It's up to the Sept Alpha.
Yeah.
Once again.
It's Cairn law.
Hashtag
But
states' rights.
But I think it's completely reasonable that Geru
It's
would want their most sacred place to be under control of the Geru. That makes perfect sense to me. I don't see any reason why that would
Hey,
be the case.
I'm perfectly neighborly to my neighbors, and I talk to them as they walk past my front lawn.
I don't let them watch me fucking my wife.
I wasn't gonna go there. I said I don't let them in my house.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair too.
I'm perfectly neighborly out there. We are neighbors, and that's great. And I'll talk over the fence at them for hours. I'll even share a beer. But if
if you walked into your kitchen and they were there, I think that would be probably an issue.
This is for those viewers watching in the UK. I would shoot them and kill them. That is the issue. Are you here without an invitation?
America.
Time to die.
How good is American Gods? What part of our games do you think has the best parallels? I think it's really a hodgepodge of the shamanistic world of Apocalypse and the world of dreaming. I think they're two different magical traditions being represented, but I think it represents them well, and I think it's not a one-to-one correlation in any of the White Wolf games. But I think you could learn a lot about where those stories come from by watching American Gods. I think that's valid.
American Gods is a lot more a secret world setting than it is.
Well, so is Apocalypse and Changeling.
No. But your spirits aren't free acting agents doing their own things on their own. They're patrons of the actual PCs. This would be like if you bumped into Chimera in the mall and he was doing some sort of cryptic mission with Black Unicorn and fucking Griffin, and like now you're sucked into these events having to do with these fucking totems, and you're like caught in the middle of it. That's not really
I think the best one-to-one correlation would be Apocalypse if the spirits didn't need the Geru. I think it would end up looking a lot like the world of American Gods. If the spirits didn't need the Geru.
Then there's the secret world where these forces are actually embodied and doing things independent of their worshippers. Because you know what you're not seeing in American Gods or the books is they're not patronage based, right? They're doing all this stuff and they're having all these things in this war over sort of very
There's more patronage-based stuff in the show.
But it's very abstracting. Wednesday doesn't get things done through his army of Sutran followers. He just drives a car, picks somebody up, drops them off. Has relationships with Shadow Moon or all the characters, right? They have interrelationships. They're not reliant on their own cultists doing the majority of their work.
And on that note, I would say watch American Gods, get hyped for Changeling, love Apocalypse because we're kicking some ass,
I guess.
and have a great week. Let's say hi to the baby.
I am the Lizard Queen.
Yes, she's here to walk us off tonight.
We heard your banshee's wail.
Wave to everybody. Bye. Say bye.
All right. Go on, guys.
See you in 2 weeks. Hopefully more werewolf.
Right.